Could you tell me briefly about your past history in raising investment for your company, MoonFruit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've actually got quite a long history. I actually started MoonFruit in the first dot-com boom in '99.
Okay.
I actually came out of the first UK internet bank, which was called Egg, which was one of the biggest floats around that period.
Okay.
I actually had a background in computer science, but I'd moved through different financial services consultancies and then into banking.
Right.
Boom, I looked a lot at the area of community because we were looking at what drove individuals to do things online for Egg, the internet banking world. And really, MoonFruit originally was about people trying to share their passions online, but also trying to remove the barriers of technology. So for a lot of people, the thought of actually trying to publish anything online 10 years ago was virtually impossible. So that's kind of where we really started. We were quite lucky. I think my old mentor at Egg actually seeded the business with our founders, ourselves. We also seeded the business, and we built our first prototype. And we were quite lucky that at the time Bain Consulting had set up an incubator, and had kind of discovered us in our attic in Soho, and then invested the first £400,000 of seed funding.
Okay.
And the only problem was, was the wisdom in those days, I think a lot of people coming out setting up internet companies in those days came out of corporates. So there was a real sense of, and also technology was expensive. There was no such thing as variabilized costs of, cloud computing, or you really had to buy the hardware.
Yes.
And so the wisdom then was to raise an awful lot of money. Also, I think the other thing is you've got to remember is there wasn't anything really like online advertising. You couldn't pull people who were online to your product. A lot of people were offline, and you were pulling them, using traditional marketing methods of print, TV, etc., which is very expensive as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So with the help of Bain, who were consultants, we actually packaged up a serious business plan, and then we actually raised another £6 million pounds from LVMH, so Louis Vuitton. The big luxury brand investor. And at the time we were using Flash to build our product, which in those days cutting edge. The reason we used Flash is because it's very much about, we wanted to do a literal drag and drop sort of product.
Right.
The need to code. So it's a website builder that was a bit like PowerPoint, building in PowerPoint. Mm-hmm. And because of what we were doing and really pushing the boundaries of Flash, Macromedia, who owned Flash, who've now been bought by Adobe themselves, invested £1 million in the business too. So we actually raised a lot of capital. However, we actually scaled extremely quickly. For a small business, I think we went from 0 to 60 people in about 6 months.
Wow.
And it was quite extreme. We got good press. We had something like, a couple 100,000 users straight away. But the product was slow. Most people didn't have broadband in those days, and we were trying to monetize through ad revenue, visitors, which, to be quite honest, wasn't getting a lot of traction for us in those days. Yeah. And like any companies who did the same thing at the time, when the dot-com crash came, our portfolio investor, LVMH, decided to close its portfolio of about 52 companies.
Right.
Partly did that because it had already made a return of its full funds by selling Liberty Surf, which so the biggest ISP and one of the biggest ISPs in Europe. And we were it was a difficult time. It was obviously a difficult time for us. But I think we were unusual in that we'd had a good relationship with LVMH, and we also had people actually using the service. So they actually gave us the option of buying back the assets of the business for a fraction of the price. And it was difficult choice to make because it would have meant we actually had to take the original business insolvent, so I had to go through a whole insolvency process, which was pretty painful. We had to of 58 out of our 60 employees, so it went back to myself and my co-founder, Eric. I had to actually sack basically my future husband, my future mother-in-law, and a lot of people that I was very close to. And I think when you start a company like that and you grow that fast, people aren't just giving you money; they're kind of giving you their hopes and their dreams as well.
Yeah, yeah.
When something collapses, that goes too. So it was quite a difficult period in terms of cleaning that up. But I think we made a choice that we hadn't finished yet, and so we carried on.
Wow.
So we went back to our attic and started again.
Amazing. What courage. And I certainly know that heartbreak feeling, but yours is on quite a big scale. So amazing that you survived that and still have that spirit of adventure and willingness to give it a shot again.
Yeah, no, we had our moments where I did wonder whether I should have just let it go, but I think we just felt we hadn't finished yet. So.
Wow, that's great. Were there any personal lessons being a woman through all of this that you noticed when you were trying to raise any sort of investment?
I think, I've always been in technology and finance, so it's a world that is kind of more dominated with men, and I suppose I've always I've always felt that you just have to make sure you do your job or your skills very well. Some would say maybe you have to do it better, maybe, but I think particularly the technology industry, I've actually always found it pretty supportive.
Right.
Maybe it helped because I'd had a computer science background, so I think most people never pull the sort of well, you can't dev card, so that helps.
Yeah.
And in some ways, there are times when actually you can also stand out. I think as long as if you're clear and you know what your business is about, I think actually that can actually help in a way because particularly nowadays, so many people, sometimes it can make a difference. They remember who you are.
Yes.
I think also it's about having the right team. So I think it's the same for anybody, male or female. You have to make sure you have the other skill sets around you. So I think Dave McClure puts it very well. I mean, he talks about a founding team needing a dev, basically a hacker, a designer, and a hustler, if you like, or a marketer, salesperson. I think that's right, and I think you just need to know yourself. On the whole, I would say what a lot of women are often better at is communication. Whether they've got a dev background or not, and also people skills. And what happens, therefore, is often the female entrepreneurs get naturally pulled into a role of communication or sales or team management. And I think that's maybe where that makes a difference. Yeah.
Okay, great. So there was no biases that you felt during that time, and you think that obviously your background and your degrees helped in easing that passage.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I'd also come straight out of college, and I actually went to Arthur Andersen to do accountancy, so I had a business and a dev background. So I think maybe the balance of the two helped.
Yeah. I mean, engender respect, I imagine.
Yes, I mean, I think the stats are against it. I mean, I think of the 52 companies LVMH invested in, there were only 2 female CEO founders. So statistically, it's still, it wasn't pro-female as such in those days.
Yes.
But I think it's also a lot about whether women want to do that role or not too. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So would you have any tips or any advice that you'd give women that may be looking to become entrepreneurs or have startups that they're thinking of raising some funding for? Is there any tips from your wide experience, because you've been through the highs and the lows?
Well, I think the important thing is look, they're clearly statistically there are difficulties. Less women go into raising venture capital. But I think a lot of that is about just believing in your own business. So, we recently raised, we kind of said the story about how we collapsed during '99. We actually, at that point, grew through pure bootstrapping. Like, we actually charged for our products, and we actually grew the business back to sort of 18, 20 people, and actually profitable.
Yes. Great.
And in the last 2 years, we've actually had a lot of traction. So we started, increasing our revenues, increasing our growth. And we actually raised another Series A in September 2010.
Right.
And recently an angel funding from Dave McClure, 500 startups, to push our growth in the US. And I would say going out raising money this time around, I actually think is a fertile time for women-led businesses. I mean, looking at research and even anecdotally, I mean, our business a year ago, 30% of our customers who were building websites were female. Today, 42% are female. So there's definitely a movement of women setting up more business online and using software to do so themselves.
Great.
I mean, obviously we're a non-tech product, so that helps, but still. Yep. The other thing is you're seeing in the US is I think women-led businesses are the highest sector of growth right now in small business in the US.
Yes.
And we're seeing in the UK. I think the other thing you're seeing is if you even take the top 4 consumer tech businesses, so Facebook, Twitter, Zynga, Groupon, more than the majority of the customer base is female. So there is female buying power out there too. And I think between the growth of women-led businesses and the growth of the consumer power of women, I think venture capitalists are seeing there is an opportunity out there. venture VCs fundamentally are opportunists. They're about trying to make returns from growing markets.
Yeah.
If they can see an opportunity, they will invest in it.
Yes. Yeah.
And an advantage to women who understand their customer base, basically.
Yes, it makes sense, and other people have given me that same feedback, that this is a great time for female entrepreneurs. Thank you for that.